So, The Witcher Season 4 is out, unfortunately, and, well, I have to say, Netflix Witcher is interesting again. Interesting to talk about, I should add. It's not good, definitely not, but after the worthless heap of garbage that was Season 2 and the desperate backpedaling mess of Season 3, well, this new season, at the very least, is gonna make for a good video here. So, as you probably know, Season 4 has Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri totally separated, all on their own adventures. Geralt is searching for Ciri, Ciri is spending time with a group called the Rats, and Yennefer is busy building her own army while training to become a Witcher. And let's pause right there, because if that last part sounded especially stupid to you, even for this show, then you'd be correct in singling it out. The thing is, Season 4 takes almost all of the writers' worst ideas, all of their useless made-up plotlines and characters no one cared about from previous seasons, and shoved them into the Yennefer part of the show. Quite frankly, Season 4 of The Witcher might as well be called The Yennefer, because it goes so far out of its way to give her storyline the big moments, the huge battles, the scenes where you're meant to be pumping your fist, but you're actually laughing because it's so poorly done and unearned. The point is, Yennefer is the centerpiece this season. She's leading the charge, building and leading an army of sorceresses and witchers against Vilgefortz and his army, while Geralt and Ciri are off on cute little side quests. Which, I should point out here, Geralt and Ciri storylines in Season 4 are the book storylines. They're not handled particularly well, which we're going to talk about, and like I said, they're essentially downgraded to feeling like side quests in comparison to what Yennefer is up to, but the basics of their stories are there because the writers put 95% of their energy into Yennefer being the all-powerful mastermind queen of the universe, one who beats up on Vilgefortz and sends him running away with his tail between his legs at the end of the season. Now, if you haven't watched Season 4, I have to emphasize here, just know that Yennefer's story, despite being the core of the season, is exactly as shallow as I just made it out to be. Yennefer basically doesn't have a story in the book Season 4 is adapting. She spends most of Baptism of Fire held captive, transformed into a figurine, so Baptism of Fire ends up mostly being the Geralt book. Because of that though, the showrunners had to, or felt they had to, come up with a Yennefer storyline from nothing. And because this show is creatively bankrupt, all they could come up with was having Yennefer form the Sorceress Avengers, and as an added dash of stupidity, she also calls in the Witchers of Kaer Morhen to teach her and the other sorceresses how to fight like witchers, and as you'd expect in this show, after a brief training montage, all of the sorceresses become masters of the craft. Which, it needs to be said, all of this is an unbelievable downgrade from what the Lodge of Sorceresses in the books do. There, the Lodge, the book sorceress group, isn't a cute little team who all get along and love each other. No, they're the opposite. They're a collection of power-hungry, selfish, morally questionable sorceresses who all have their own motivations and goals, several of which involve using Ciri for personal gain. They operate in the background, and they're interesting because of that, because they're such a toxic, shady, backstabbing group with only a small number of members that have decent intentions. A group that, by the way, the Yennefer of the books wants nothing to do with. The fact that Season 4 reduces the Lodge to being Yennefer's personality-less Avengers team is just another failing of the writing in this show, and I know I'm being a little harsh here, I know I'm borderline ranting, but man, Yennefer's storyline this season takes up so much screen time, yet somehow accomplishes nothing other than, I guess, ruining the Lodge and making Vilgefortz a chump that Yennefer wipes the floor with. I mean, in the books, Vilgefortz solos Yennefer like she's little more than a mosquito, whereas in the show, he's no match for her sheer power. They even have Vilgefortz kill off Vesemir right before Yennefer defeats him, just to drive home how all-powerful Yen is. And if you haven't watched the new season and you're thinking, what, they killed off Vesemir? Yeah, they did, but it's a version of Vesemir that gets about 4 minutes of screen time before dying because they recast him for this season, and Vesemir's needless, completely useless death got no reaction from me other than an eye roll. This show is just so far off the rails that I don't care who they kill at this point, because my Witcher, the Witcher I love, is the books and the games, and at this point I see Netflix Witcher as a clown show I review for your entertainment. A clown show that, by the way, also kills off Margarita this season, and Kira this season, both in the Yennefer plotline, both sorceresses that don't die in the books, but who cares? Kira and Margarita in this show have nothing to do with their book counterparts. They are those characters in name only, nothing more, and they have no discernible personality in the show as their own thing either, so how could anyone possibly care? Ugh. Anyway, on that positive note, why don't we shift over to talking about the Geralt and Ciri side quests in Season 4 of the Yennefer. And I will say, compared to the Yen stuff, well, there are a few things to enjoy in the other parts of the season. Ciri's storyline specifically is pretty simple to break down. Just like in the books, Ciri ends up traveling with a group of criminals called the Rats, and before anything else, let's get one thing straight. Long before the show existed, before the words Netflix and Witcher had ever been paired together, the rats were already among the most disliked characters in the Witcher community. If you search them up, all you'll find are old posts with titles like, "Did anyone else hate the rats in the books?" and "Man, I hate the chapters about the rats," and so on. I even got jump scared by myself with an old comment I'd made about their arc on one of those posts when I searched them up for this video. Point is though, the rats have never been well liked. They're a group of teen criminals who go around killing people for fun. They corrupt Ciri horribly. Missile in particular is a character who does awful things to Ciri. Another character called Kaylee tries to. And while yes, the rats have sad backstories and are victims of the war themselves, when I read the books, my sympathy is always pretty limited. Once you start killing innocents and enjoying it, personally for me, I no longer care about your sob story. In the books, the rats are not meant to be liked. They're meant to serve a purpose. Ciri meets them as a very innocent 14, soon-to-be 15-year-old, and we see how even a kid as kind and innocent as Ciri can be corrupted by the world around her, just like the rats themselves were. It's a death of innocence arc, which, to get back to the show, doesn't work at all when you completely whitewash the people who are killing her innocence. The Netflix show changes the rats from being cold-blooded, violent killers into being, well, Robin Hood kids, teenagers who engage in silly hijinks and steal stuff. The show tries really, really hard to make the rats likable. It fails miserably, in my opinion, but it tries. I mean, Netflix even gave them their own prequel movie where they team up with The Witcher, and the Netflix writers try even harder to make the rats just a misunderstood, lovable bunch. If you weren't aware, by the way, the Rats movie came out the same day as Season 4, and I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going to be reviewing it. 2 Netflix Witcher videos in a row might just kill me. If you really want me to, let me know in the comments, leave a like on this video, whatever. Anyway, point is, attempting to make the rats a bunch of likable, quirky goofballs completely guts the entire purpose of their arc with Ciri. And really, the only redeeming quality to the Ciri storyline this season is how it ends. Which, of course, is when bounty hunter Leo Bonhart shows up and kills each and every one of the rats. And I have to say, Leo Bonhart is an amazing villain in the books, and he's amazing in the show, too. Throughout Season 4, Bonhart gets a handful of short scenes where, similar to the books, you see him get hired to track down Ciri by a guy named Stefan Skellen, an agent of the Emperor. And then you see various moments as Bonhart is on Ciri's trail, only catching up to her at the end of the season. And each time Bonhart was on screen, it was like I was watching a completely different show. The guy they cast for Bonhart, Sharlto Copley is his name, or Copley maybe, absolutely killed it, to put it mildly, and the Bonhart scenes in Season 4 make up the best content Netflix Witcher has ever had, period. And when he shows up to kill the rats, I mean...
Let the music play.
I know this is complete whiplash from the rest of this video, but the casting of Bonhart was a home run. Every scene with him was perfect, although I will say I do find it funny that despite the Netflix writers' very hard push to try and make the rats lovable, the reaction to them dying in the show seems to have not changed from how book fans have always felt. AKA, people are just thankful for Bonhart, thankful that he showed up and took the rats out of the story. It's a funny thing where Bonhart is a horrible person, a villain you definitely root against later, but in the moment when he's getting the annoying rats off of your page, or off of your screen in this case, well, I for one am not gonna complain. Thank you, Bonhart. Anyway, you might have noticed that we are almost 10 minutes into a video about a show called The Witcher, and yet I've barely talked about The Witcher, and I saved this part for last, the Geralt part for last, because, well, it's complicated. Before we get into talking about our new Geralt, Liam Hemsworth though, I do need to take just a minute to thank today's sponsor, Wand, which is a super useful app that lets you very easily customize and enhance your single-player PC games. Upon installing, Wand automatically finds your game library, and once you launch a supported game, take The Witcher 3 for example, you'll have access to an amazing overlay that gives you total in-game freedom. From simple things like unlimited health to getting rid of annoying limitations like how much you can carry or how often your swords and armor break, those features and many more can be toggled on or off with just a click. What's even better is that for games like Witcher 3, Wand also adds extremely useful dynamic maps. Just pull up the overlay, check out the map to see nearby hidden quests or treasure or whatever, and with just a click the game can teleport you straight to them. It's incredibly useful, especially for replays where you don't want to miss anything. That's just The Witcher 3 though. Currently the app has custom support for over 3,500 games. Games like Cyberpunk and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and many more. So if interested, you can download Wand for free using my link in the description. And while the free version comes with all the features we just discussed, there's also Wand Pro, which has even more features and is currently on sale for Black Friday. And again, using my link and then code WANDBF25 will get you 25% off a yearly subscription, which is the lowest price they'll be offering all year. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, Season 4 should have been the Geralt season. For perspective, Geralt has 209 pages worth of content in Baptism of Fire. Yennefer has 6. That said, it's not like Geralt is absent from this season. His story is definitely condensed and pushed to the side a bit to make room for Yennefer, but there's still a lot to talk about, including, well, we'll get there. To start though, it has to be said, Liam Hemsworth as Geralt is perfectly fine. People loved Henry Cavill, and I'm glad he had a passion for the role of Geralt and everything, but he understandably quit the show. Liam Hemsworth takes over here, and all things considered, I thought he did a good job. Now, Geralt's story this season should have been a tension-filled one, because in the books, it's Geralt versus the world. In Baptism of Fire, as mentioned, Yennefer is a prisoner. Geralt doesn't even know if she's alive, and actually suspects that she might have betrayed him and taken Ciri herself, so it's a really hopeless situation. Geralt is also injured from his fight with Vilgefortz, and it's only the unlikely companions Geralt blunders his way into having that give him a bit of hope. Now, I think needless to say, the changes to Yennefer's storyline this season really kills all of that, because in the show, Yennefer is proactively building her own army to defeat Vilgefortz and find Ciri, so Geralt's adventure feels aimless and borderline pointless in comparison. Like, Geralt was put in the corner with a choo-choo train and some Play-Doh while Mommy does the real work. That said, if you don't think about that and you just look at Geralt's scenes for what they are, well, they're still pretty bad, actually. At the beginning of the season, what you have with Geralt's storyline are 3 characters with no history and no chemistry. Our new Liam Hemsworth Geralt, the original Dandelion, and then Milva, who only appeared at the very end of Season 3, and I thought turned in a very questionable performance.
Like I've been saying, you can't leave unless you get better, and you won't get better unless you let us help you.
The waters weren't successful. The waters are supposed to make you forget. Guess they didn't work on me either.
In Season 4, she's improved a bit, but still, almost every time there was an awkward line delivery this season, it came from Milva.
When I was little, my father showed me a caterpillar.
Anyway though, as the Geralt storyline moves on, it rapidly brings in Percival and Zoltan, a gnome and a dwarf, and then Regis, played by Lawrence Fishburne.
I'm a vampire.
So by just a few minutes into episode 2, what we have is a brand new Geralt, a Milva who was one of the weaker parts of the last season, 3 completely new to the show characters in Regis, Percival, and Zoltan, and then Dandelion, who is just completely surrounded by this new cast. This 6-person group comes together in like 18 minutes worth of Geralt scenes, and from there, the show just kinda barrels forward with this group as you get random Geralt content here and there. And I say random because Season 4 is just constantly cutting back to Yennefer and her core of the season storyline. That is where the show is focused, while Geralt's story gets scenes. Scenes that feel like very pointed, hey look, we're doing this thing from the book moments, even if we didn't do any of the build-up to or homework for it, because we were too busy giving Yennefer hype moments and opportunities to aura farm. Individually, there are certain Geralt scenes this season that are decent. They're okay in comparison to average Netflix Witcher. For example, they somewhat faithfully recreate one of my favorite book scenes, where Geralt and his company, that's what they're called in the books, his company and then later his Hansa, but they enter a village and see a girl about to be burnt at the stake, accused of cavorting with a vampire. After Geralt, Milva, and Zoltan all offer to perform a trial by combat to save her, the priest who wants to burn her instead proposes a different type of trial. A baptism by fire where one of Geralt's company will need to bring a red-hot horseshoe from the nearby fire all the way to him without suffering even a slight burn. It's of course intentionally meant to be impossible, until Regis, unbeknownst to Geralt, a higher vampire, steps in and picks up the horseshoe with ease, exposing himself as something more than a human to a Witcher while simultaneously showing his humanity. It's a beautiful scene in the book, and that scene is in the show, more or less. It's hammed up to 11, and you don't care about any of the characters involved because you met them 2 scenes ago and most of their development was thrown out to make room for Yennefer's Avengers, but hey, even a hollow, not particularly well executed book scene is still a huge step up in comparison to all of the show-invented nonsense. Speaking of, why don't we talk about the continuation of the Radovid Dandelion romance, which is pretty much the only show-specific storyline that infects the Geralt plot in Season 4. If you don't remember, last season the Netflix writers decided that it would be a good idea to take Radovid, who is about 12 years old in the books, and age him up significantly, just so they could put him in a romantic relationship with Dandelion, who is pushing 40. A very, very weird and highly questionable choice, if you ask me, and unfortunately that storyline continues in Season 4. Directly after the scene we were just talking about where Regis picks up the horseshoe, chaos breaks out, Geralt is knocked unconscious, and in the next episode he and Dandelion find themselves captured by a northern army who, on no real grounds, suspect them of potentially being Nilfgaardian spies. This is similar to the books, but what isn't similar is that Radovid is there, with Dijkstra, and Dijkstra has a convoluted plan to, I guess, use Radovid and Dandelion's deep, passionate love to change Radovid, to turn him into the kind of king he can control. It's really contrived. What Dijkstra does is send Dandelion to Radovid's tent, and while Dandelion is there, Dijkstra starts torturing Geralt in a different location. How are those two things connected? Well, Radovid and Dandelion have this dramatic, over-the-top conversation in his tent where Radovid confesses that he can only be a good king if he has a great lover at his side, like Dandelion. Dandelion is conflicted, of course, because his love for Radovid runs so deep, it's just so powerful, but then, at that exact moment, Dijkstra is successful in getting Geralt to cry out from the torture, which he'd been trying to do for several minutes, over several scenes. Dandelion hears Geralt, which leads to Radovid shifting from "please stay with me" to "if you stay with me, I'll stop whatever is happening to Geralt," because Radovid actually had no idea, which then leads to Dandelion flying off the handle and calling Radovid a weak, pathetic idiot who will never get to experience his bard love again.
I chose you. They took that from me when they killed my brother.
And you will die like him too. Alone.
It's this really over-the-top scene that seems to assume viewers are deeply invested in the Radovid-Dandelion romance. But more importantly, the whole plan of Dijkstra's here makes him look like a moron. It relies on everything going a very specific way, down to the minute's worth of timing, and also, his master plan is borderline guaranteed to blow up in his face, which it does. One scene later, Radovid realizes Dijkstra was trying to sabotage his meeting with Dandelion because it was obvious, so he fires him. Also, an obvious outcome, which is my biggest frustration here. In the books, Dijkstra is brilliant, beyond brilliant, yet in the show they've made him out to be the world's biggest buffoon, all for the purpose of furthering a ridiculous lover plotline between Radovid and Dandelion. Radovid and Dandelion, let me say that again. What are we doing here? Anyway, after this, Regis shows up and frees Geralt and Dandelion from the camp. Again, similar to the books. And, well, I'm not going to go scene by scene with the Geralt stuff, but I do want to pause and mention that I actually thought Lawrence Fishburne was interesting with his take on Regis. Yeah, his costume looks terrible, and no, he doesn't look anything like book Regis, no shared features whatsoever, but still, he's a great actor giving 110% to the role, and in a vacuum, that made him one of the better parts of Season 4 for me.
When you look at me, do you see comrade or an enemy?
I haven't decided.
How high would the bounty on me have to be for you to decide?
Bloody high. You're not exactly an ordinary vampire.
I say in a vacuum though, because I didn't think the cast of the Geralt plotline this season had any chemistry with each other. It's not really their fault because the actors are just thrown together so quickly in between Yennefer scenes, and Geralt's group gets even larger than we've mentioned as Cahir soon joins and Yarpen joins, but Geralt's company just have so little time to develop as a group that they never really end up gelling at all. To the point where late in the season, when a couple of the members leave, Yarpen and Percival, I laughed out loud when the show was trying to play that off as a big emotional scene, because you had characters tearfully saying goodbye to each other that had never shared a single line of dialogue before that moment, or maybe they had like one interaction. Which, needless to say, is what happens when you sacrifice 50% of a show's runtime to useless made-up plotlines that add nothing to the story. You then have way less time to develop the characters that actually matter. It's time to wrap this video up though, with two final small topics. The reunion between Geralt and Yennefer, and the Battle of the Bridge, which is one of the most iconic moments from the books, and one they adapt in Season 4. Yennefer and Geralt reuniting needs to be mentioned first though, because plot-wise, this even happening is a mess. Near the end of the season, Yennefer just teleports directly to Geralt. It's that easy, apparently. The show never explains how she just knew where he was in the middle of a random forest, and more importantly, it never explains why she can't just do the same thing for Ciri. She tells Geralt, I don't know where Ciri is, but how did she know exactly where to find Geralt then? She didn't know where he was either. Keep in mind, in the books, Geralt and Yennefer don't reunite until the end of the story. Very pointedly, none of them know where either of the others are, and the isolation and the desperation is the point. Yennefer, Geralt, Ciri, they're all on their own, but In the show, having Yennefer teleport directly to Geralt, apparently having known where he was the whole time, in my opinion, really takes a lot away from that. Now, to be fair, I suppose in this show it doesn't matter that much because we have a brand new Geralt that has no history with his Yennefer or Ciri, other than a couple flashback scenes in this season, and then we have a Yennefer who, at the end of Season 2, was gonna sacrifice Ciri to a demon. There's not really a family to be invested in seeing reunite anyway, they've botched it that badly, so whatever, I guess. Geralt's story this season, though, wraps up with the Battle of the Bridge, which is Geralt and Cahir's true baptism of fire in the book of the same name. Long story short, while a battle is raging nearby, Milva suddenly miscarries the child she'd been carrying. Because that's happening and she's unable to walk, Cahir and Geralt find themselves with no choice but to help the defending Lyrians hold off the attacking Nilfgaardians, because if they don't, their group will end up being overrun too. It's this really amazing moment where Geralt and Cahir spring into battle. Dandelion even has a great moment where he inspires some low morale Lyrians into returning to the fight, and well, in the books, it really solidifies Cahir as a true ally of Geralt's. Cahir, a former Nilfgaardian officer, has to make a choice. Is he going to defend Milva by killing his own, or will he turn on the group and join Nilfgaard? He of course chooses the former, and he and Geralt turn the tide and lead Lyria to a decisive victory over Nilfgaard. Now, the show keeps the same Milva-related reason for Geralt and Cahir being forced into battle, but well, most importantly, the Cahir emotional hook just isn't there in the show. I've talked about this in reviews of previous seasons, but Netflix Witcher completely rewrote Cahir as a character. He's a very minor presence in the books until he decides to join Geralt. He's a very, very young officer who we don't see do much other than having a brief encounter with Ciri. The show, though, made Cahir a major character from the beginning, and spent 3 seasons showing us that Netflix Cahir is a total psychopath who does horrible things to innocent people, which makes Cahir's presence in Geralt's Season 4 group highly questionable. And I think the show knows that, so Cahir is just kind of there this season. They don't address much, which makes everything with him on the Battle of the Bridge very unimpactful. The battle itself is okay. I mean, I didn't particularly like that they took away Dandelion's big moment. They make his speech useless and comedic, and I also wasn't really a fan of them randomly having a troll show up in the fight. It's just not that kind of battle. It's meant to be a serious, chaotic melee where Geralt feels very out of place. The show actually writes in a lot of invented scenarios for Geralt to fight monsters in. In fact, I would say the vast majority of the monster fights from the past 3 seasons are show invented. Which, I have to say, I do understand that choice. People complain all the time about there not being enough witchering in this show, which is just one of those things where, I don't know, you'll see people say that they want a book-accurate Witcher show, while also saying that they want this same show to be a Monster of the Week thing, where Geralt is just taking on contracts. Which just isn't what the books are. After the initial short stories, Geralt barely hunts any monsters because he's searching for Ciri, so I do understand Netflix injecting the monster action here and there because people would complain even more if they didn't. Anyway, that aside, Season 4 of The Witcher isn't good. Yennefer's plotline is abysmal, as bad as this show has ever been. Ciri's story isn't much better, other than when Bonhart gets involved, and the Geralt stuff has some salvageable moments, but that's about all I can give it. Overall, I suppose Season 4 is better than Blood Origin, and I don't think there'll ever be a season of the main Witcher show I dislike more than the second one. Having Yennefer want to sacrifice Ciri is unforgivable, but unsurprisingly, I can't say I recommend Season 4. If you haven't watched it, search up the Bonhart scenes and call it good. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps get my content out there. Let me know if you want me to do a review of the Rats movie. It might kill me, but hey, if you aren't subscribed and want to see that, subscribe, and maybe that'll pop up in your sub box a few days from now. Thank you as always to my patrons for their support. Keep an eye out over there for a new bonus video very soon. And that's all. See ya.